Today, we'll be discussing a massively powerful capital ship which saw action during the Clone Wars, the Mandator class Dreadnought and its successor, the Mandator II. The Mandators were arguably the most powerful capital ships of the entire Clone Wars, and we're going to spend today's video breaking them down and talking about their history. As a note though, although we do know quite a bit about the Mandator, we've never actually seen official images of the ships. So I've turned to Fall of the Republic, which is an excellent Clone Wars mod for Star Wars Empire at War that you guys should definitely try. It's free and available on Steam. I'm going to link both to the mod itself and also to my friend Corey. Corey runs Fall of the Republic, Thrawn's Revenge, and other mods for Empire at War, and he's also a great YouTuber, so check out his channel. Alright, so to understand the Mandator and how it served during the Clone Wars, we have to understand its history. And the Mandator was arguably the most powerful ship to ever see existence when it was launched. Also, arguably, one of the largest. A lot of people know this, but the 1,000 years preceding the Clone Wars were an era of peace and stability within the Republic. That was largely due to the Ruusan Reformations. The Reformations had several features. First of all, they decentralized the Republic's military so that individual planets and systems were responsible for their own defense, but the Ruusan Reformations also limited the size and armament of large capital ships. And one thing we also have to realize is that the Clone Wars, and especially the Galactic Civil War afterwards, were really the golden era of very large capital ships. There was never really a time in Star Wars history where a main ship of the line for a faction was as large and as powerful as the Imperial Star Destroyer. Palpatine really militarized not only the Empire, but the state of warfare throughout the entire galaxy. And the Empire was arguably also the first faction to use these super massive capital ships commonly. Now, there are some other very large vessels in Star Wars history, but there were not very many ships, and perhaps none, that rivaled the size of the Mandator before its construction. This was likely due to a difference in technology between the older and modern Star Wars era, and perhaps the rise of these supermassive shipyards like Kuat drive yards. In a way, the Mandator was sort of a unique product of its era. It was produced 2 decades before the Clone Wars, and despite being 8 kilometers long, which was, by the way, the original given length for the SSD, Ruusan compliant, i.e. it was legal under Ruusan Reformation limits. The Mandator was most likely designed with a certain amount of weaponry and then stripped down later on. Additionally, Mandators before the Clone Wars probably had a very poor hyperdrive, if one at all. And I say it's a product not only of the Ruusan Reformations, but also its times, because the ships were built partially at least to advertise the strength and capabilities of Kuat drive yards, which would then try to sell other ships to powerful and rich local sector defense forces. Anyway, by the time the Clone Wars rolls around, the Mandator is actually thrown into real service, which may not have ever been the plan for the ship, mostly in a defensive role, with 3 of the massive ships defending Kuat and others protecting Azure, Zixtar, Alsakan, and Humbareen. However, with the Clone Wars underway and the Republic in desperate times, presumably there was some act repealing the Ruusan Reformations, and Kuat drive yards produced a heavier, more capable version of the Mandator known as the Mandator II. These would have had better armor, much better hyperdrives, and probably significantly more weaponry. The Mandators were largely used in defensive positions, protecting the core throughout the Clone Wars, which is pretty similar to what we see during Total War in a lot of cases in the Star Wars universe. During the Yuuzhan Vong War, the very large capital ships of the New Republic and later Galactic Alliance usually stayed near the core, or after Coruscant fell over planets like Mon Calamari. That's because, to be honest, they're not very movable. Large capital ships are very slow, or at least most are, so often they won't be able to make it to a battle in time, or the enemy will just run, especially without interdictors. But if you're parking one over a planet, you're making it very useful. It's going to be hard to siege a planet that's protected by a Super Star Destroyer, and in that case, you're also dictating the terms of the engagement. You can't run from a Super Star Destroyer if you want to attack a specific planet. Super Star Destroyers, especially in the Vong War as well, were also often present for long, drawn-out sieges, so it makes sense to have a ship that is very, very survivable. Other than that, the ship is described as being humpback and that it's 8 kilometers long, we don't know much about the Mandator's design, and that also rings true for the Mandator II, although presumably the 2 was really just a 1 taken to its full potential. I doubt the Mandator II had any significant design differences. It was probably just the Mandator 1 with its full armor, hyperdrive, and weaponry. The Revenge of the Sith cross-section also says that the Mandator could take on 1,000 separatist recusants, just pointing to the sheer power of the ship. But we admittedly don't know what happened to the Mandator IIs after the Clone Wars. That being said, the Mandator did have actually 2 successor classes. There was the Mandator III, which was a 12-kilometer long upgrade on the Mandator line, a slow and powerful capital ship, and its cousin, the Bellator, which is seen as sort of an offshoot of the Mandator line and was actually smaller than a Mandator II at 7.2 kilometers, but instead focused on speed and flexibility. Well, flexibility for a Super Star Destroyer anyway. We don't know how many Mandator IIIs the Empire had at its height, but the Essential Guide to Warfare states that the minimum is 5 based on the fact that 5 Mandator IIIs were said to participate during the opening stages of Operation Shadow Hand. But that's really all I have for the Mandator. I am, however, going to do something I haven't done in a while, and that is answer a hashtag AskEck question. For those who don't know, if you're interested and have a quick Star Wars or really any question you'd like to ask me, feel free to leave it down in the comments with the hashtag AskEck, and I may get to it at the end of a video. Alright, so today's AskEck question comes from Whiskey, who asks, with the release of Clone Commando for PlayStation and Switch, can the events and characters of that game now be considered canon? In some of Delta Squad, I think actually all of Delta Squad already is canon. However, just because a game is getting a re-release does not necessarily mean that it is canon, just like how the Tartakovsky Clone Wars getting re-released doesn't automatically make that show canon. That being said, I mean, there's literally not a whole lot of story in the Clone Commando games. I mean, I think most of it could be considered canon. It fits pretty well within the established storyline. Like, it's headcanon for me because, again, there's not a whole lot there. It's really just a few missions that don't play a whole lot of impact in the greater war. So is Clone Commando strictly canon? Well, no, not officially, but it could be canonized in the future. Delta Squad itself is canon, as are most of the team members. So yeah, that being said, again, for something to be made officially canon, it's usually pretty clear, and assume if it's a re-release of something that it's not being canonized, and that if it's something new, that it is. That's all for today though, guys. As always, have a good one, be safe, and may the Force be with you.